Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, and we battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time, according to two film geeks from Wiltshire, England. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and subscribe. Fuck Captain America, fuck Thor, fuck Superman, fuck Iron Man. Yes, this week...
Language.
This week we are doing R-rated comic book films, as The Suicide Squad is out in cinemas in the UK and now in the US. So... yes, that film has all the swears and the bloody nonsense that we love in a film like this, so we'll be having a look at R-rated comic book films. And as always, I am joined by the Mr. Encyclopedia man, that is Mr. Boaz Dix. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm ready for some bloody, violent comic book action.
Good, good. So, my pick then is V for Vendetta. I kind of picked this one because... there was a lot to choose from in this. Some really good stuff. I kind of really picked this because I hadn't seen it for ages, and I really wanted to revisit it, really.
Now you understand my picks, my process of picking a movie. I kind of want to watch this. That's just an excuse to watch whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I considered Blade. That's really good.
I think this is better than Blade.
Your one as well. But I also considered Joker as well, basically because I really don't like that film. Because it really fucking annoys me a lot.
All right. So you'd only pick it to lose just to trash it.
Yeah, but I didn't want to just trash it. Yeah, I didn't want to do that, so I picked something else. So I picked V for Vendetta in the end. Dredd also was a good one.
Dredd is fucking amazing. I love Dredd. If I didn't pick Logan, I would pick Dredd. Without a doubt. Man, Dredd is incredible. It's essentially, it's really cool. When I picked The Raid, it's basically The Raid of comic book movies. If anybody hasn't watched it, watch it immediately. It's so good. Also, Deadpool is just really funny as well, so that was definitely in consideration. But really, V for Vendetta, because I hadn't seen it for ages, so I picked that one. Right, what happens in V for Vendetta? Well, this film is set in the UK, but not as we know it at all. It's in a future where the government is very much like a socialist nationalist, basically like the Nazis. Yeah.
From World War II.
Norse fire. And
there's a freedom fighter called V who basically dresses up like Guy Fawkes, so not particularly subtle about what he's about. So he wants to basically blow up Parliament, because Guy Fawkes did in the 17th century, I think. And also there's these two cops who find out information about one of their ministers or something, that there was a connection with drug money, and basically they slowly find out the truth of how this government came about. And obviously V, the character of V, was a victim of that in Lark Hill, and was kind of basically burnt alive and survived, and kind of got mild superpowers, I guess, from the experiments from Lark Hill. And V, that was kind of the backstory. And then V meets a girl called Evie. They meet up, and she basically helps V with his plan in ending up blowing up Parliament. So that's basically the film. This film is really dark. I think this is basically R-rated, not for the violence, not for the swearing, but just the subject matter. There's some really dark themes in this. What did you make of this one, Boaz?
I think, violence-wise, it's not, too bad. I mean, there's some blood and some other stuff, but it's not that bad. I do agree, the subject matter is pretty dark. I mean, it's, it's an oppressive totalitarian state, a lot of oppression and death. And terrorism. I mean, I don't think there's any way to get around that. V is a terrorist. He is a good terrorist.
Well, in this government's eyes.
Yes, I mean, yeah. the government is evil, so his terrorism is fine, I suppose.
Justified.
He's played charmingly by Hugo Weaving. That's the one.
Yeah, directing. I mean, I quite like the scene after V forces a news broadcaster to play his tape, like addressing London to protest next year on November the 5th. He puts masks on everyone in the room, and the cops bring out like two of them, and one is cowering, saying, "It's the other guy." And they lift up the mask, and he's just got like a ball in his mouth, and then you find out that the cowering guy ends up being V, and takes them all out very efficiently. It's just a very simple but clever plan. I love the last shot where like V stabs the cop right up close to his face in like side profile. It's quite a menacing picture that V really does mean business. That was quite a good action scene there. I quite liked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I completely forgot the opening of this film. I had no idea it would start with actual Guy Fawkes being arrested. Yeah, I forgot about that scene completely, where Evie is talking about, what he tried to do and what he means and stuff. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. I love that we're introduced to... well, it's just like straight off the bat, like when she's getting ready and you have that newscaster, the anchor.
Lewis Prothero.
Just raving and ranting like a freaking lunatic. I love that guy. I love that character. I thought he was just like... He's so intense and like just over the top. He reminds me of Bill O'Reilly. He's an American talk show host that's a bit, fucking full on. Yeah.
I was saying, this film is really dark. I think you definitely get that from the flashback scene. When we go back to Lark Hill, it's really fucking dark. Where they literally throw dead bodies into a pit of dead bodies, after they've been experimented on and just killed. Quite horrible to watch. It's like, oh my god, this is a comic book film. What's going on? You expect to see this kind of thing in like a Holocaust documentary, not in a comic book film. As I said, there's a lot of overtones to like the Nazis in Germany in World War II. It's pretty dark stuff. What I love about the directing the most is the feeling of like duality and fate between these two characters of V and Evie. They both go through this torturous experience that makes them live without fear. Yes, one was done with a manipulation, but the end result is the same. You have similar images cut together of the two characters holding their arms out. V is in the fire at Lark Hill and Evie is in the rain on his roof. Even before they first meet, you have similar shots of them dressing for the evening. V like suiting up and Evie just getting ready for an evening out, I think. Even have just like similar shots of them just walking down the street at the start, before the attack, the opening action scene. And even their names are really similar, like V and EV. That's not by accident.
Well, I mean, he doesn't believe in coincidences. They kind of they keep doing that because about fate, especially. Like he's constantly going, "Oh, this is some strange coincidence." I don't believe in coincidences. There are no coincidences. Even when he picks EV, he saves her, and then what's your name? EV. EV. Of course it is.
Yeah.
I think the thing that the film does well, like editing-wise, is montages and like cuts, Yeah, so any kind of moment with some sort of like montage of cuts or different things or even like reminiscing memories and all that shit. I love how that stuff is edited together. So, when Evie is like liberated and she, after the torture and what have you, and she realizes the truth and what you're saying, where it goes back to the creation of V and what she's been through and her in the rain and stuff. All that is cut together so wonderfully. When the detective, this was a really good scene that I forgot was in the film, but when the detective pieces it all together and you have V knocking down a collage of dominoes and just all these cuts of like the previous stuff in the movie, the stuff you haven't seen in their past, the stuff that's going on now, even some like flash forwards to like the future where it's going to end, and the dominoes going down and then stopping. I just thought that was edited superbly. That was just that was a masterpiece. I really like that. So definitely like the direction when it comes to editing a collage of shots Like, these giant montages are where this film excels. I thought the action was okay. I kind of had a problem with some of it. I don't know. Especially, I think some of the first action scenes, it just seemed a bit... like the whole shaky cam thing? I don't know. It was a bit disorienting. Yeah, the last fight scene, I think, was a lot better because, at least it was all slow motion, but at least you got, like, long looks at what the fuck you were looking at. Like some of the previous action scenes. A bit too frenetic, in my opinion. I wish more of the action scenes were like the last one. But
I think certainly V is very much a character where it's just efficient killing. He uses knives. If he's going to use one attack to kill someone, he's just going to use one attack,
Yeah.
So, I mean, half the time he just throws knives at dudes and kills them straight off. So,
yeah.
He doesn't mess about with fancy moves. But yeah, I did like the last action scene as well, like where they used like these CGI like light trails with the knives in slow motion. I quite like that. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
It didn't distract me. I thought it was just, it was cool. Yeah, it just made the scene like more epic, really. And you get these shots looking through CRUDE's gun barrel, which looked really nice. But yeah, V loves a domino, doesn't he? Bloody hell, that must have taken a long time. Must have had a lot of time in his schedule to do that for like no apparent reason, really. Just for the film, in case someone's filming it.
I reckon he could have blown up Parliament like a few years ago, but he was too busy with his dominoes and collecting his art and all the other bollocks. And, wiring up the soundtracks for the music and stuff. He does a lot of busy work. I mean, for one guy, he is an absolute tech unit,
I mean, he must be absolutely fucking loaded as well.
Or he's just killed enough rich people.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I love, like, Parliament blowing up at the end. That was pretty cool. But, I mean, I would hate to be the Amazon guy receiving the delivery of 100,000 Guy Fawkes costumes. I'm like, fucking hell, who's ordered all this?
Yeah. It's the same guy that ordered 1 million tons worth of, rockets and fireworks.
Yeah, they should have found him like really quick, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, for a totalitarian, I'm not going to poke too many holes, but yeah, for a totalitarian state, you think. I mean, we're not quite there yet, and I reckon we could have found him in a week.
Yeah.
But still, what I was saying, I like montages, even the montage of his death, bellowing into, what have you, and then cuts between that and MacReady and Evie and the crowd as they walk by. Also, it confused me when I first watched it, but I thought it was pretty cool that everybody takes off their masks and some of the characters that we know are dead, they're also in the crowd unmasking, like Stephen Fry and stuff.
Right.
I thought that was pretty cool. It's like the spirits of the dead even are like rejoicing at this liberation.
Have you got a favourite shot then, or a favourite scene?
Well, yeah, I mean, favourite sequence, I suppose, visually, I've just sort of discussed would be when MacReady works all of this out, because he says he went to Lark Hill, and just that giant montage done at the same time as the domino stuff. I like that sequence. I thought that was great.
Yeah. I love the shot, beautiful shot, where V is about to kill the coroner off screen, and she's in bed and in her bedroom, and there's like long curtains by the windows, and as the wind blows the curtains, you see a little bit of V's mask appear in the light, and then it disappears as the curtain really drops back onto the window. That was just really like spooky and just great visual and really creative. I truly like that bit.
Yeah, that was a great bit.
And V's like, oh yeah, she asks like, oh, how are you going to do it? Oh, I did it 10 minutes ago with this drug or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Score then for directing Boaz?
I'm going to give this an 8.
Nice. It's really good, to be fair. As I said, as like a comic book film, you expect action half the time, and certainly this is one with very limited action, but I think you don't lose any enjoyment through that, because the story is really compelling, the characters are really great, and this is such a different story that we don't often see very often. This is a very different reality, and I think it really works. But when you do get the action scenes, they're really well done. Yeah, I'll go like 8.3, I think.
I also kind of like the feel of it. Every so often it does go onto the street level of like what the the bad guys are thinking, what the cops are thinking, the regular person in the street when they're watching TV. And it's got this kind of eerie feel to it because it's not very different from modern England. Like the way everybody behaves, you're like, this just seems like it's now, but that it has a total. It just seems very grounded and like quite like it could happen, or it is happening. It seems very kind of uncannily real for like a dystopian future and present.
The only scene I didn't like was when V is clearly in disguise as William Rockwood. When the inspectors come to meet him and you can clearly see it's V, you're like, yeah, it's V in disguise. Then when they reveal it literally in the next scene, I was like, yeah, I know, it was obvious. Are we supposed to be fooled by that?
Same. Same. I thought that was kind of silly, especially like just the previous scene. He had tricked Evie and like that she was arrested and tortured her. And you wouldn't tell that because like everybody that V is playing by a different actor. There's no way like that is Hugo Weaving. He plays like six guys like questioning and torturing her. Like there's no way any of those people are Hugo Weaving. But at the end of that, you're buying into the fact that he's such an incredible performer, V is, that he can make himself look like anybody. He's got masks everywhere, and he's so realistic and what have you, and his acting is so good. And then you get the next scene where he's trying to convince McCready, and you're like, you sound like V. You look like V. That mask looks crap. It's like, how is he being fooled? It just, I don't know why they didn't just do it like they did the previous ones. I know they'd say that's cheating, but the previous scene was emotionally cheating. But you make them buy it by just saying, oh, V's that. Just have a different actor play the informant. Yeah. No prosthetics. Just have some old guy. And then say, oh, shit, that was V. My God. How amazing is he? I think you're right. They should have done that differently. That was a bit weird.
Screenplay, then. I love the language V uses to introduce himself to Evie and basically uses every word beginning with V to describe himself and ideas.
I can say that speech.
Really?
I have watched that scene so many times. Just that scene. I can say that.
All right, go on then.
So in view, a humble vaudevillian veteran cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate. This visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi, now vacant, vanished. Verily this vichyssoise... Oh, fuck's sake. Verily this vichyssoise... Oh, shit, I've forgotten it. Fuck. But I got pretty close.
Yeah. That's impressive. I mean, what you did there was still really impressive. But he doesn't say volcano, though, does he?
No, he doesn't say volcano.
That's a V word.
Or vagina. Or vagina. You could have said that. I will slay these vaginas in the government.
Oh, dear. But yeah, it's fucking brilliant. I mean, you can only just admire the monologue, and it's just so clever, and it's way too long to write down as well. Okay, go on then.
Okay, yeah, I've remembered it. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified and is vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin, vanguarding vice and vouchsafing the viciously violent and voracious violation of volition. The only verdict is vengeance, not as a votive or in vain, but the value and veracity of such will one day vindicate the vigilant and the virtuous. Fuck yeah!
I might have to slow that down a bit in the end. That was impressive. Yeah. So that's Bowers' favourite line.
Yeah, we're all sorted there.
But yeah, there's loads of like really interesting lines that they take from like Shakespeare and things. There's one, I dare do all that may become a man who dares more as none. I like that line. It's, V quoting from Macbeth. When he cooks Evie breakfast, it's like really poetic, a way to sum up the whole film, really. This simple idea of freedom, we take for granted. And if you try to control people's freedoms, you're no man, essentially. It's just, that's an interesting bit there. Interesting in this week's episode, we've got two films that reference very closely other films, a film within a film that's very similar to their themes.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. yeah. So this one, the theme is revenge as well as like fate and freedom, but definitely the motivating factor behind V is mostly revenge. I think up until he meets Evie, and then he gives her the choice to carry it on. Like, he's like, this can die with me, it's fine. And she does do it, but she's not doing it out of a sense of revenge. She's doing it because it's right.
Yeah.
And his thing is the Count of Monte Cristo. He's constantly watching the Count of Monte Cristo. And I like when she watches it, because she's never watched it, and she says, I find it sad, and it's like, what do you mean? Well, he was only focused on revenge. He didn't really care about his, family and stuff.
Love interest.
Like, okay. Yeah. It's like, it's interesting. It's like he's never really considered that. It's like, what? Revenge is... Okay. Revenge isn't that great? And, when we talk about Logan, Shane is the...
Shane,
is the kind of... Yeah, Shane.
The hero in that film, Count of Monte Cristo, the hero basically cares more about revenge than he did about the love interest. And hearing that, you feel like V has basically consumed himself about his plans to blow up the government. And it's interesting that Evie kind of tricks V in escaping after he kills the priest. And because there was no strong indication that she really wanted to leave, but then thinking about that fact that V states that he will kill people, you're like, of course you would want to leave this guy. I just like the way the script didn't make that obvious. They use the theme of that film again at the end, where V ends up falling in love with Evie and he blows up Parliament more for her and her generation than revenge for himself. So that was quite a clever ending, referencing the Count of Monte Cristo. And the bit where V manipulates Evie in losing her fear was quite interesting. There's a line where V is pretending to be someone else and he says, just give them something, anything. And then Evie says, thank you, but I'd rather die behind the chemical sheds. And then V says, then you have no fear anymore. You're completely free. And it's just a great twist that V himself tortured Evie, so she's willing to die rather than give up information on V, basically. For this idea of freedom. It's just a trust exercise to the extreme, really.
Yes. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy scene. You get where he's coming from, but man, that is traumatic. You kind of understand why she kind of left him for a while. It's like, I understand what you've done, but I can't be around here. It's like, oh, okay, fair enough. It's almost like the film as well. I was going to say is like a romance story in a very strange way, because they do end up really loving each other in the end. But it's such an unconventional romance. It's like saved her from some bad guys, basically kidnapped her. She escapes at one point, nearly gets caught, then kidnaps her again, tortures her, and but it makes more sense in the actual film. You're like, I suppose it makes sense. I do like when she wants to see his face. Do you like that bit? I like that bit where she wants to see his face, and he's like,
she kind of stops him. Stops her.
Yeah, he stops her and is like, under this mask is not me. That's no more me than, the flesh under the skin,
on the
or
mask.
The bones, or the bones beneath that, or the mask itself. And I quite like that. And I like at the end, he's dying of blood loss and she gives him... No, is this before? I can't remember, but when they kiss goodbye. And she kisses his mask. I thought... No, that's when he goes off to die. She kisses him. That was interesting.
I think what I quite like about this script, I think the end game of this film was always going to be the same. Parliament was always going to blow up. That was never going to change, I don't think. But it was the reasons why for V was what changed, I think. At the beginning, he was very much doing it for himself. And, he was doing it for himself and just to take down this government. That was it, this totalitarian government, or however you want to call it.
Totalitarian,
There you go. But in the end, he stumbles upon this character, Evie, and his ideology about why he's doing it, it changes. It's for the people. It's not just revenge for himself. It's about relinquishing people's fear about this government and just living free, So it's just kind of cool the way this film has exactly the same end game, from the start, but it just changes by the time you get to the end of why he's doing it, So
I will say, beyond the very alliterative V quotes that V has, I like a lot of his lines. Like, there's always some like cryptic wisdom in a lot of the things he says, whether it's quoting Shakespeare or quoting some other great Latin or whatever. But I like even just some of the little one-liners he says. You're like, that's pretty clever.
By the power of truth, I, while living, have conquered the universe.
Yeah. Or where he goes like, where the guy was shooting the fuck out of him at the end, and he's like, "Why don't you die?" And he's like, "Behind this mask, there is more than flesh. There are ideas, and ideas are bulletproof." And it's like, that's pretty badass.
That's my favourite line, yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good line. And he chokes him out like he said he would. He said he'd choke him out. Because he said, we're both going to die. He's like, how are you going to kill me? With my hands around your throat. It's like, oh, yeah, oh, bollocks. I like the response, bollocks. At the end, he fucking kills him. Chokes him out, just like he said.
Yeah. That's the go-to British swear word, bollocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Greedy. And ideas are bulletproof. Time to die now. My nose looks like Big Fucking Ben. That's not from V. That's from...
the guy, yeah. He was quite funny. Oh, you remember when the fingers were coming in and the detective, his deputy, is like, butter up, here comes a finger. I like that. I thought that was quite funny. God. Yeah.
Oh, dear. Sorry, dirty mind coming there. Score, Boaz, what are you going for screenplay?
Yeah, I thought the screenplay is quite fun. I like Evie. I thought she was great. I like V. I like a lot of the villains. Their personalities. It was quite a lot of fun. I'll give it like an 8.4. No, actually, fuck it. I'll give it like an 8.7, actually.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, really. I really like the script. That opening monologue, just so good,
Yes.
And you got there in the end.
I got there in the end.
Yeah. I mean, that must have taken so much time by Alan Moore to write this. We should mention, actually, that this is written by Alan Moore, but he famously has nothing to do with any of the adaptations. If you notice in the credits, his name is not on the credits whatsoever. It might be on Watchmen, I'm not sure. But
I don't think
definitely
it is.
not on this one.
I think the last film his name was on the credits to were The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which he also wrote. That was a comic of his. And he said the reason why everything went bad is the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen got sued by another screenwriter who said that they had nicked his idea for a film, And so he was like, okay, I'm going to sue you guys. But because this is based on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he thought, okay, Alan Moore nicked my idea, and he tried to sue Alan Moore. The film The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, beyond the characters, the plot has fuck all to do with the comic. It's got seriously, it's not an adaptation of any of his work. So he got, lobbed into this legal dispute. And I think since then he's like, if you want to adapt my work, keep my name the hell away from it. Yeah, so they had him embroiled in this legal nonsense because they adapted his work, quote unquote, but didn't actually adapt it. And it led into some trouble, and he just wanted nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Score for me then for screenplay. Yeah, as I said, this is such a dark film and got a really great script. Yeah, I think I'll go same 8.7. I think acting. I quite like the restraint of fear in Stephen Ree's acting when he's talking to Dominic about the government was actually responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people because of this virus or whatever. That performance was really good by the detective played by Stephen Ree. Natalie Portman is fantastic in this film.
I thought she was really good.
Yeah, when she finds out that the people that tortured her was actually V. She's amazing. She goes from this anger to crying in her eyes out to hyperventilating is in such a short scene is quite amazing.
I thought she was really good in that film, but at that point, I think it just, she just dialed it to 11, where I think on the page, if you read it, character has a breakdown. It's like, she has a breakdown. It's the most intense emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy crap. That was a really good performance. I think before that scene, I think I would have said maybe my favourite actor in the film was Hugo Weaving or the guy that played the news broadcaster or Stephen Fry. I mean, he's always a joy. But that scene is just so good that I think just by the virtue of that fact alone, Natalie Portman would be my pick for my favourite performance in the film.
Yeah, because you don't expect her to be arrested in this film, really, and just go through this horrible, torturous experience of getting her head shaved off. It's just, it's just quite an incredible few scenes that.
Yeah. And I feel sorry for any of our listeners who are bald. It is a shame to have to live through that.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, we're going to lose all of our bald listeners. Yeah.
Yeah. But I enjoyed Hugo Weaving as V. I mean, we've talked about acting with masks on our Mandalorian special episode. So if you like The Mandalorian, check out our Mandalorian special. These actors have to be so conscious of their movement, especially with their head, especially not moving too much. The act of stillness is really important, and subtle movement, especially to get the emotional scenes right. And, credit to Natalie Portman as well, because half of what acting is reacting to what the other actor is doing, and Hugo is under a mask the whole time. So she has little to nothing to work with, which must have been really challenging. And most of her scenes are with V. And also, I love the fact that the mask, never comes off.
Oh, man, I just learned something really interesting going for the wiki there. Because when you were talking about Hugo Weaving's performance, I swore I heard that he didn't play the body of V at some point. So I was just seeing if that was true.
Oh, really?
And it turns out he actually was in half the scenes as the body of V and the voice of V. And then there are many other scenes where it's a previous actor called James Purefoy.
Oh, right, yeah.
He left 6 weeks before filming finished. So they redid the rest of it with Hugo Weaving, and he just overdubbed the whole thing. So I think...
Oh, right.
For Hugo Weaving, that's pretty good, because not only have you got to overdub all your lines in film and all that stuff, then act in a mask through a lot of the film, but also match another actor's performance in said mask. That's pretty good. It's not too bad.
For Natalie Portman, though, having to work with two actors with different voices, on set, two different voices on set, that's got to be hard.
Yeah,
that's got to be really hard. Yeah, my favourite performance is Natalie Portman.
I'm gonna ditto with you.
Score for acting?
It's fun. A lot of people give some really fun performances. So what will I give this? I don't know. 8.8?
I'm not sure I'd go as high as that. Yes, acting under a mask is hard, but I think you do lose some of the responsibility of actually what is on your face a little bit. But obviously you're very conscious about everything else in your body, like what you're doing with your body and your head. Obviously you're more conscious of that, but I would say it's slightly easier. Maybe it's difficult to judge, but the fact that certainly with Natalie Portman, she's got nothing to react to other than two different actors' voices, so that's hard. And everyone else is pretty good. Always love to see John Hurt and Stephen Fry on screen. They're brilliant. So I'll go 8.4, I think. Right, let's add up the scores then for V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta gets 50.9. Right, what is your film, Mr. Encyclopedia Man?
Mine is Logan.
Cool.
The last film in the Wolverine series of X-Men movies.
And Hugh Jackman's last performance?
Yes, yeah. Well, not last performance ever. He's still making films, thank God. But his last performance as the titular Wolverine, Logan.
He's like, after Logan, fuck it, I'm quitting acting.
Fuck this. I don't think he'll ever quit. What is he... He makes so many films. He's come out with one recently, hasn't he? I know literally nothing about.
Reminiscence. Yeah, which we will do an episode soon on Hugh Jackman films, so for that one. Why did you pick Logan?
Yeah, I picked Logan because, I thought it was a great film, so... I've always been a big fan of the X-Men, Marvel stuff in general, but even way before the MCU and stuff, the X-Men films were, I quite liked them. Well, to be honest, I only liked the first two, really, the first two were amazing.
Okay.
And then they kept making them, and, they were okay.
Well, you didn't like Days of Future Past?
Oh, man, I love Days of Future Past. I would say, X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past, to me, are, the best X-Men films. And all the others are so-so.
Yeah.
One is really good. 2 and Days of Future Past are just my favourite. They're just timeless.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an incredible film. And then the rest are some are shit and some are like okay.
Meh.
Yeah, so it's a kind of, and then even when you go through the Wolverine films as well, the first solo X-Men Wolverine film, man, that was bad, and then the second one I liked, but it was still not as good as like X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past for me. It was okay. It was pretty good. This one I think is on a whole nother level. I really like this one.
Was there any other films in consideration outside of X-Men, or?
Really? There were quite a few. So Dredd, obviously, we talked about that. I would have definitely picked Dredd. That's a great film. There was this film I was talking about before when I was talking to you a while back called Super with Elliot Page now, and that film is absolutely ridiculous, but it's so much fun, and I think you would have liked it. So.
Cool.
And that is gory as fuck.
Is that James Gunn?
Let me just try and find out. You can edit out the search if you want. Yeah, it is. It's James Gunn. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
So, actually, shit, I should have picked that because then it would have been a perfect fit for the Suicide Squad. I had no idea.
Come on.
It is a great film. You need to watch that. We'll watch it or whatever after this. It's just it's a mental movie. And then the end, if the end of Super is anything to go, if you're thinking about what the action is going to be like for, I hope it's going to be like Super, for the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
That was messed up. The ending of Super, you're like, what the hell? Like, it's such a funny, crazy film of these guys trying to be superheroes, but at the end, it's like the realistic of like, heads exploding, legs blowing off. Like, holy fucking shit. Him beating someone to death with a spanner. Oh, God.
Yeah, isn't this like weapon a wrench or something?
His weapon is a wrench, and his phrase is "Shut up, crime."
Oh God,
it's such a ridiculous film. Anyway, so we should get beyond that because I'm not reviewing that movie. Logan, that's the one. I forgot which one I'm reviewing. Can I review both?
You can if you want, but
yeah.
So what happens in Logan?
I think this picks up a few years after Days of Future Past. After he's changed the timeline and all that stuff. And it was really positive then. The next couple of years later, it's not positive at all. It's like all the mutants are gone. There's only really him, Wolverine and Professor X and Caliban left. They live together. Wolverine is getting old. Like, he looks much, much older than his age. Considering he's like, the character is like 200 or something. But he looks like he's getting on. He's making money just getting by as a limo driver. His healing factor is failing. He's got Professor X to deal with, who's got like some sort of brain disease. So it's not looking very good for him right now. There are no more mutants. All the mutants are gone. They're all dead. So, it's kind of a bleak future for Logan. And then he is given a job because he's thinking about like leaving the country, but he needs a lot of money to do so. And this woman contacts him of like a courier job, like if he can take someone like this little girl to North Dakota, and she'll pay him thousands to do so. And at first he kind of doesn't want to really do this, but he does eventually accept the job, and it becomes a lot more complicated than that. It turns out the little girl is basically his child. Like, they took some DNA of his, the bad guys, and they made all these mutants, and she's one of them. So she has all the powers of him. And so they go on a road trip to North Dakota while being chased by this nefarious mutant killing organization that is like raising these mutant children and what have you.
So what did you make of Logan then? I mean, I really love this film. I think I'm with you. It's one of my favorite X-Men films for sure. Mainly because it's so fucking emotional at the end. It's just like, it does make me very teary sometimes.
Yeah.
It certainly did when I rewatched it. It's really, really good.
Yeah, because you were even saying when you watched it, you were like, oh man, I nearly cried. And I just kept thinking, because I haven't watched the film in a while, I was like, you pussy. And then I watched it and I nearly cried, like, several times. Like,
there you go.
Oh man, this is hard.
Because obviously we've watched this character for so long, since 2000, when the first film came out, X-Men. Right, directing then. I love the first action scene in the film where Logan is basically fucking up some Mexican thieves. And I love the shot where he's kind of losing and is on the ground and getting beaten up, and then a shotgun reloads, and there's a great like push in on Hugh Jackman as he starts to get like really angry and just go fuck it and slices the guy's arm off. The shotgun goes flying and goes off. The scene is so brutal, and you get the tone right from the off that this X-Men film is going to be very different.
Absolutely.
Plus, I love the idea that one of the claws doesn't come out properly, and then later he has to pull it out. It's such a different film to all the other X-Men films.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of like the whole the Dark Knight Rises of X-Men films. It's like hero way past his prime, who's giving it another go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like that scene. One, because you get you get an immediate sense of just where everything is. The character, you know what he looks like. He's passed out drunk in the back of his limo, so you can tell just shit is not going well for Logan. You know what I mean? You've got a setup of basically everything, like his deteriorating health, his terrible mental condition, his job. The fact that he's a limo driver. And straight from the off, a fight scene where it's like, yeah, he's not in the best physical condition. And then you get the tone of the movie. Like, this is going to be violent. We have a character with claws. He is going to finally use them as God intended. Like, these aren't PG-13 claws. They're not going to just scratch people. He's going to take off limbs, take off heads, stab people in the skull. I thought that was a pretty cool shot.
Blood's going to go everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, because he basically asked them, he's like, what, you're taking my hubcaps, they're not worth very much. Just shoots him straight away.
You're just going to scrape all the paint off.
Yeah, he's like, what the hell? Yeah, that was pretty good.
It's just interesting mentally with the character, because he's just more concerned about protecting the car than actually trying to stop them. Just hit me, not the car, please. I need this job.
Yeah. Well, I think, the old Wolverine would have immediately decapitated the whole lot of them. And it's just the fact that...
I'm not sure about decapitate, but,
Well, PG-13 kill. So, just go, ha! And then they all fall down dead. Fully formed. Their bodies are pristine. But do you know what I mean? Like, old Wolverine probably wouldn't have stood
definitely.
for this shit at all. Where young, you know what I mean. But now this old Wolverine, he's like, he just wants to be left alone. It's like, dude, I'm in no mood. Like, I'm just trying to get by. Just piss off, will you?
And I always find it in like 12 rated films, the directors are always very conscious of fight scenes, especially fights with knives, that they have to like shoot around the impacts a little, and they have to use wider lenses or whatever. But because this is R-rated, they're really embracing what Logan and Laura can really do to another human being. The first fight Laura has is amazing. There's like a shot where she literally kicks someone in the head with a claw from her foot, and it's right up close to the camera with blood everywhere. The fights are really in your face, like we've never really seen before in an X-Men film.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, just, heads rolling all over the place, people getting stabbed in the neck and the throat.
It's just like, James Mangold just doesn't feel like he has any limitations on what he can do. He can just do what he wants with these characters in terms of the violence,
Yeah.
What an R rating brings to this film as well is like a bigger sense of realism. If a guy's going to have claws come out of his hands and kill people, you're going to expect blood.
Yeah.
Plus, one of the other nice like realism moments I liked is if you're going to have a really slow car, you're not going to drive through a wire fence. Which was a nice and surprising thing to see.
Yeah. I really like that action scene. I thought that was cool. Because he tries to go straight through the fence and is like, no, it's stuck. And then I love that he's dragging it behind him, just taking out bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the most impromptu, badass, Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a good casting.
Just a shame that CGI was a bit dodgy, though, in that bit. But it's a small thing. Mm-hmm. I love the second seizure scene in the casino where Charles is having a seizure and he's accidentally freezing every human in the area, but freezing mutants slightly as well. Because his mind is going, everything is shaking massively, and it's just a great representation of a character losing his mind. That's as powerful as Charles Xavier. I love the moment Logan is approaching one of the goons in the corridor. And the goon's eye just turns slightly to look at Logan. He's like, oh, shit.
Yeah. And Logan is dragging himself along with his claws. I love that. Just shh.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna kill you. I swear to God, I'm gonna kill you. You're the guy's wife. But I like that fight scene. I think that's probably my favorite. One, it's quite inventive. You know, you have that power that Charles Xavier used in like X-Men 2, where he's able to like just freeze people in place. But he's freezing them whilst giving them a tremendous seizure, and everything's going around. And you have that happening to Logan, but he's forcing his way through it and just killing all these people. And I love how they stay in place. Like, he stabs through one, and they're fixed in place like statues. Until, like, you know, they inject Charles, and then just everybody, like, literally everybody is killed, just drops. That was great.
Just falls.
That was awesome.
It's interesting how they created the look of that scene, because apparently the camera guys were shaking the camera a lot, and then they used, like, stabilization software which usually smooths out the shots, but because, you know, they were shaking the camera so much, you know, you get this effect. But they must have shake those cameras like ridiculously violently, because the software these days is like so good, it can really like smooth it out like really well. So I can imagine a lot of like tired crew members on that set just shaking cameras all day.
Yeah. Or, you know, you attach the camera to like a jackhammer and just move it everywhere. Up the stairs.
That's a good idea.
You know, the floor is fucked. Just get no shots of the floor. Everywhere else.
Yeah, always keep it high angle, people.
Yeah. We can't do another take. Have to, you know,
no.
refloor the whole hotel.
Another scene I really liked was, I can't remember my first reaction whether I thought it was actually Logan or X-24 in this moment. I can't remember. But I felt it was quite convincing. You know, I liked how with Charles' death was constructed, because he notices Logan come back, but he's kind of shadowy, and you don't see Logan's face, but you kind of dismiss it a little. And then Charles is saying that this night has been, you know, the best night he's had in ages, because, you know, they've had a family meal, they've had family hospitality, which has been amazing for him. And then he's saying he remembers what he did in Westchester, that he killed like a lot of people, I guess, through the sieges. He's pouring his heart out to Logan, and you're like, hang on, we haven't had a reaction shot to Logan yet. That's quite strange. But when you do, it's a younger looking Logan with his head shaved. And before you know it, he's got his claws in Charles's chest, and you're like, what the fuck? You know, claws everywhere. And Charles is dying. You're like, no! It's just such a shocking moment. It just catches you by surprise so brilliantly. Could you tell it was X-24, or when the first time you saw it?
Probably not at first. I don't think so. I think maybe I kind of worked it out of it, you know, pretty quickly, because his shirt is black. So I think I clocked on something's not right here. But yeah, it's quite subtle.
Just like the way that scene was cut together and structured, really.
And it's really sad as well, because, you know, Logan is, when he picks Charles, and X-24 is going mental on the you know, the cowboys, which was awesome. That was amazing. And he's like, you know, it wasn't me, Charles, it wasn't me. And, you know, he's crying and shit. And I thought that was really like, oh shit. Because, you know, you wouldn't want the last thing for basically his father figure to think that he killed him, you know? It's just, yeah.
You got a favourite shot then, or a scene?
Favourite scene? Probably when Wolverine dies, actually. That was pretty amazing. And, I mean, you know, favourite action scene, the hotel, like, without a doubt. Although, you know, the action is pretty solid in a lot of the film, actually. It's really well done.
I love the shot after Logan takes, like, the whole vial of the green liquid that enhances mutant powers, and there's a shot of Logan, like, running through the forest and takes out a load of goons so violently and so quickly.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And ends up, like, diving on one of them and then stabs him through the chest, and then cut to a close-up of Logan, like, literally roaring his lungs out. And it's just, like, really satisfying to watch. Like, yeah, this is, like, insane Logan right now. Yeah. Insane Wolverine.
Yeah, that whole scene was pretty badass.
Cool. And, like, X-23, like, fighting with Logan.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
At the end,
yeah, that
was pretty cool.
Yeah. She jumps off of his back onto somebody. Yeah, that was pretty badass. Do you remember the bit where, like, X-24 just, like, decapitates that guy? Yeah. That was fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Because basically, he's hiding out with this family, and they had an altercation with these ranchers who are like basically bullying them.
Yeah.
And he embarrassed them, beat them up and stuff. And they come over to the guy's house, not knowing that all this shit's going down. And they're like to X24, they think he's Logan. Well, why don't you work for us instead of him? We'll pay you more. We'll pay you $5,000 a day. And he is just expressionless, And then he just like takes his head clean off and then just goes through them. That was awesome.
Very bloody. So directing score for me, I think I'll go pretty high, to be honest. I think this is what like the film James Mangold really wanted to make, I feel like he had to get through the Wolverine, the Japanese one, to like prove himself to the producers maybe that, he can do it. Because there are some elements of like the Old Man Logan comics, but it's kind of very loosely based, I think.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like James Mangold has any limitations on what he can do, certainly with the action, and focusing on like the Shane kind of themes and storyline was such a clever move. It works so well, and actually making the decision to actually kill Logan in this film was such a bold and brave move. Yeah, so just really well done again. And you have this very like realistic, grounded level to this film as well. I mean, you do get a lot of X-Men powers shown in this film, but it just feels very grounded and just really satisfying. So I'll go like 8.7. How about you, sir?
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the grounded nature of it. It feels pretty visceral. It's very atmospheric. I love the action in it. I like the camera work. I like kind of the quality of the images. Do you know what I mean? Like everything looks pristine. Looks really good. Like there's some bloody high quality cameras that they recorded this with. Like it just looks really good, which is good. I mean, it's just great. Everything looks like really well detailed. You can see everything. You can see every pore and every sweat droplet. It just looks great, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we should mention the makeup is like really amazing on Logan. Certainly towards the end, and as you said, everything like the details are so good that everything just feels really dirty and just really brilliant, just really grounded and earthy.
Even like the more fantastical bits. I mean, I think you're right. There are some areas where you're like, maybe the CGI there needs a little more touching up. But it didn't look like it's not a CGI heavy film. It just seems like a lot of stunt work and a lot of like practical stuff, which I think is good.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I quite liked it. Yeah, I might give it like a 9. I think it's like my favorite like X-Men.
Cool. Certainly my top 3, not in any particular order, is certainly Logan, X-Men 2, and Days of Future Past.
100%. 100%. I agree with you, 100%. I said this just before, but X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past are like the X-Men movies for me. This is like the Wolverine film for me, So, yeah, I would say that's the trilogy.
Right, screenplay then. I really liked like the info dump scene or exposition scene where Charles and Logan are watching like the video message from Gabriella on her phone about Transigen, that they're creating like new mutants for weapons. And it definitely feels like a found footage style, which just adds to like the realism and adds an extra narrative that the footage was captured secretly. Plus the fact that the phone dies and they have to buy a charger to watch the rest, adds realism as well. And a good way to make Logan like watch the last bit on his own to convince him to go to Eden, with Laura and Charles. Just a really clever way to express exposition in a film like this.
I don't think he's paid for that charger. He just took that charger.
No. Oh yeah, he just took it.
Yeah, I thought that scene was quite funny. Like she's just taking stuff, and the guy is the store clerk. Tries to manhandle her because, you can't let a customer just walk away with shit. Let's find your dad. And she just flips him around and is going to stab him in the face. And then Logan's like, no, that's not okay. And he's like, where's your charges? Okay. Just grabs a bunch of shit and then just goes. Like, you're like, oh, okay.
Well, because she's never been to a shop before. She doesn't know what the fuck a shop is. It's like, ooh, food. I'm having that. I've got claws, so fuck you. And of course, we've mentioned it. It's no accident that the film they watch in the hotel room is the classic Western Shane, which starred Alan Ladd, a gunfighter drifter type character who can't ignore a bad situation even though he has no connection to the people, which is basically the same story here. You know, there's a line you hear in Shane where he says, "There's no living with the killing. Like you can't live a normal life as a killer. Once you start, there's no going back." And at the start of this film, Logan is really trying to live a normal life and earn money, but just can't help himself but get into a fight.
Well, despite how hard he really does try, I think when I like how they kind of again, I can't say that damn word. This is the second time I've tried to say it.
Juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition. Or juxtapose, yeah. So, but basically, the Wolverine of Legend with how he is now, and, basically even what the Wolverine of Legend was like. It's not great. I killed a lot of people. I'm in a bad way. I just kind of don't want to do this anymore. But his call to adventure, he ignores it for a while. He just doesn't want to get involved. And, every time, basically, Charles and Laura kind of they keep trying to center Logan, because he just doesn't want to get involved. It's like, well, we've got to do this because, we've got to save it. It's like, I don't fucking care. Leave me alone. But he does do it.
Yeah, but he kind of subconsciously just helps them anyway.
Yeah.
He's just keeps saying no, but he does it anyway.
He'll do it anyway, yeah. He knows what the right thing to do is, but you can tell he's kind of maybe just a bit fed up of doing the right thing. Or maybe doesn't think he deserves to do the right thing or something. Just
going back to, there's no living with the killing line they use from Shane. They're having a family meal and experiencing family hospitality, but that family all end up dead.
Yeah.
But what was disappointing with the Shane footage, though, they do spoil the final gun battle in Shane, which is a bit off, a bit annoying, but there we go. Have you seen Shane? Well, it's spoiled for you now anyway.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, it's great. Classic Western. You should all go and see it.
It's a good film.
And, of course, near the end of the film, we learn that Logan has wanted to kill himself with the adamantium bullet, which you kind of get that sense anyway. But when Laura says to Logan, "I've hurt people too," and then Logan says, "You're going to have to learn to how to live with that," and Laura says, "They were bad people," and Logan just says, "All the same." It's like Logan is saying, it doesn't matter who you kill, it all adds up emotionally, and you're going to have to deal with it. Again, the same theme there as Shane, there's no living with the killing. It just certainly does feel like the X-Men version of Shane.
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that this film just has a very Western-y feel to it as well. A lot of desert landscapes. They're on the road. They're pretty much on their own. It's got a really nice Western-y quality to this film.
Yeah, I would agree. A sort of neo-Western vibe, a lot of empty spaces, a lot of country people, and a lot of scenery, cattle, all that kind of shit. It just seems, very Western-y. Even, places where there are buildings, but really not many buildings. It just seems very old and rustic. So this is far into the future, but where they are, it's quite. It does seem like it's in the past. It kind of reminds me of No Country for Old Men. That sort of neo-Western vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Again, a very dark movie.
yeah, definitely.
I found Xander Rice's death really satisfying, played by Richard E. Grant. Because in so many action films, especially spy movies, there's always a scene where the bad guy explains what his plan is going to be to the hero.
Yeah. Well, during the explanation, he gets up most of the explanation, and then Wolverine just blows his fucking head off mid speech. To me, it reminded me of The Incredibles, where they were complaining about how a villain monologues. Do you remember that bit where he throws something at Syndrome as he's monologuing? It just reminded me of that. It's villains are so stupid. They're so predictable. Get them to talk about themselves and then take them out.
And it feels daft that the bad guy has to tell the hero what the plan is, but really he's telling it to the audience.
Yeah.
And in this, it's just the film is just having fun with those types of scenes where Rice is just halfway through his explanation. Then, as you said, Logan just doesn't care and just blows his head off. Brilliant. That was a good death.
I quite liked Pierce.
Boyd Holbrook.
For me, I think he's the villain of the piece. I know it's really, Richard E. Grant, who is amazing. I like Richard E. Grant and stuff like that. But I quite like Damian Pierce. I liked his character. I liked how he's written. He's written as this kind of...
Yeah.
He's like a fanboy of the X-Men, but is a villain.
Yeah.
And I just find that so funny. He's dripping with like sort of cool and kind of like weaseliness, like just a swarmy guy who dresses really cool, but you're like, yeah, this guy is weird. Like, you know, he's always smiling like an evil grin. Do you know what I mean? He's joking about everything. But I like how he's always sort of fanboying over the X-Men. I think that is kind of adorable.
Yeah, yeah, big fan, by the way.
Like where he's like, as I live and breathe, the Wolverine. I read a lot about you. You know, he's just, oh man, I can't believe it. You just think, it's kind of funny. It's kind of quite nice.
I love that scene where Laura is like approaching all the goons and and he's like, Laura, no, 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 stop.
Yeah, that was funny, yeah.
And then like everyone starts shooting them, and like one of the best lines I wanted to hear in previous X-Men films and Wolverine films, where he says, "Stop shooting, she heals."
yeah, I thought that was good.
That was so brilliant.
Yeah, I thought he was a great character. I quite liked him. I thought he had a great chemistry with the heroes. You know, they're being chased by this guy, but there's something just kind of endearing about him. He's like the comic nerd who's in the film. He's like, don't bother shooting at them. They're going to get back up, you know. Like, he knows the characters. It's like he's done the research. He's kind of a nerd villain, and I quite like that. I thought it was kind of funny.
He's a fanboy villain.
He's
basically.
a fanboy villain, yeah.
There's some funny lines in this, you know, from Charles when you first see him. He says... The new Quesalupa from the Taco Bell. Get it with chicken, get it with steak, and with cheese baked right into the shell. It's the next big thing. Go now while supplies last. Great advert there.
Yeah.
Caliban, played by Stephen Merchant, he has some great stuff. Like, I hardly see myself carrying below decks like Nosferatu.
Nosferatu? Jesus, is that like a flatulent Nosferatu? Nosferatu, not Nosferatu. Jesus Christ.
Same thing. He's a vampire, come on.
Yeah, but, you know, hopefully not with a good sense of smell. Nosferatu.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start that again.
No, keep it in.
I hardly see
Keep it in. People need to know.
I hardly see myself carrying below decks like Nosferatu. Do you? Folding your underpants and making him spotted dick by Caliban.
Yeah. Did you mean Nosferatu?
Nosferatu.
Yeah, it's Nosferatu.
Anyway.
Okay, I quite liked Steve Merchant at this. I thought he was pretty cool as Caliban. Satisfying, like, self-sacrifice at the end. You know, I like how he kind of threatens him, because he's like allergic to sunlight, so they keep torturing him with sunlight. Price is like, you know, didn't your mama always tell you, you know, beware the light? And he's like torturing, and I like that, where he grabs grenades, you know, beware the light, and just blows up the whole fucking van.
Yeah. My favourite line comes from Caliban, where he says, I'm a glorified truffle pig, not a clairvoyant.
Yeah, that was good.
Have you got a favourite line, then?
Oh, you know where Rice is Damien Rice? No, that's a singer. Wrong
Just
Damien.
Pierce.
That's the one. Pierce, not Damien Rice. A cannonball. He's a great singer. Anyway, yeah. So, Price, I like when he's beating on Wolverine with all of his men, and Price says to him, it was like, Jesus, Wolverine, seeing you like this breaks my damn heart. It will as soon as I rip it out of your chest, fuckstick. I like that. That was quite funny.
Score for me, this is just like the perfect end for the Logan character, and I love all the references to Shane and the themes. Yeah. So it's certainly one of the most satisfying X-Men films for a while.
I like when, you know, basically he's dying and he's like accepted that, you know, Laura is his daughter, and I love that line of, this is what it feels like, and then he dies, you know, because it's always about, you know, Charles is like family, you know, and all this shit, and, you know, it's like, yeah, he got a family at the end, then he died.
Yeah, just brilliant. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about, you know, our top 3 X-Men films. I didn't put it in order, but I mean, I could easily put this at number 1, definitely, even though it is the last one. So I would go like 9.1 for script. Yeah.
I think the script is incredibly strong. It's just really well done. There's a lot of just. Also one thing I didn't mention, but Charles Xavier's depiction I thought was interesting because, like, in most of the other films, he's like, you know, a sage, wise man, and he still is at parts in this film. But it takes on the very real reality. He's that old. His mind is starting to, you know, fade, and he is like just And obviously, he's been living like crap for the last God knows how long. So he's a bit pissed off, and I do like having a thoroughly pissed off and annoyed Professor X who's just speaking his mind. He's old enough to just say what he really thinks. I like that. Where it's like, we're on the run. She's a child, and I'm fucking 90.
Oh god.
Yeah.
So you got an acting score for me then? Screenplay.
Screenplay. Yeah. I agree with you. I'll give it like a 9.2 or something. I think it's one of my favorite screenplays for the X-Men films.
All right, acting then. Yeah, you're talking about Patrick Stewart's performance as Charles Xavier in this. You know, we're so used to seeing him as this very like assured, calming influence to other mutants with such a wise persona, but in this, he's anything but. You know, the first scene, you know, in the abandoned water tank with Logan, Charles is suffering from dementia, and he's shouting out this food advert with such abandon, and he's being really angry and sweary with Logan, and his voice is so weary. Such a different character. Brilliant performance by Patrick Stewart. But I think one of the best performances in this film is certainly Hugh Jackman himself. I mean, I love how he uses different types of like anger and grumpiness to play Logan and X-24. You know, as X-24, it's like Wolverine we've seen before, this very aggressive, focused anger, controlled breathing. But as Logan, his anger looks more weary and he's tired. And that's not just done with the makeup, it's very much in his acting. His breathing is very heavy at times. And when he gets hurt, you really feel like these wounds are really hurting him even more than they usually do. You know, Hugh gives him, you know, a limp throughout the film too. And he just looks tired all the time.
Even him just kind of standing still and even looking intimidating, you feel like the weight of his body. It feels like he is trying to carry himself up. And I do like the acting of that. It's like, I've been at this a long time. I feel like exhausted. Like, this is ridiculous. But I do like the fact that Hugh Jackman does it differently for X-24, who is, you know, he's young, fit, nimble, focused. They do feel like different characters, and Logan is just it's like at the end of his rope. Really. Yeah.
It's kind of a weird feeling because he's basically playing the Wolverine we know as X-24, but as a villain.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like unnerving that this is basically the same character that we know. But obviously he doesn't say a word, but it's just like, it's a bit unnerving, really, that we've been supporting and cheering this type of character for all these other type of films.
Yeah.
And now this exactly the same persona is the villain. It's just like, wow, that's not easy.
yeah, definitely.
To watch, you know. But I love the moment from Hugh Jackman when he's just buried Charles and all he can say is, "It's got water," you know, and again looks so emotional but so tired. You know, you can really see him trying to find more words, but he just can't. Plus the scene where he's beating up the truck is quite funny, but as soon as he collapses, you're like, oh, Laura, go help him, quick. And again, we'll end by like talking about the last few scenes with Logan's death. You know, I love Daphne Keane, who plays Laura X-23. You know, her and Hugh's performances are incredible in Logan's death scene. You know, Daphne Keane is like so in the moment and so emotional when she's got like tears as well as snot running down her face. Did you notice that?
I didn't zoom in on the snot, to be honest with you, but I'll believe you.
There's definitely a bit of snot there.
Yeah.
Definitely committed.
Yeah. I think it was kind of my favourite part with her is, you know, and also with Hugh Jackman, coincidentally, is when he's dying. I think he does a great "he is dying," you know, phase where you're like, oh shit, you're dying. And she does, like, you know, this great thing of, like, concern. I would say, like, the problem with her, but it's not really so much of a problem. I think she's a great, you know, she does a good job. Her character kind of irritated me a bit. I liked her, you know.
Really?
Yeah. I think the reason why she irritated me is kind of a positive. I think it's the fact that she...
Okay.
It's like, she hasn't interacted with people before, so she seems very antisocial and just kind of like a wall, do you know what I mean, and aggressive as fuck. And you kind of have that through most of the movie. She's quiet as hell. She's just moody and like grumpy and like and just doesn't know how to talk to people or interact with people. I think that makes sense, to be honest with you. I think she does a good job of portraying what that is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, at the end, I do think that's a kind of resolution of that, because she does, when she starts speaking, and starts speaking a lot more, has some really good scenes with Hugh Jackman, almost exclusively, and then, you know, has his death scene. And I think, you know, the character sort of, it just felt like a progression of the character as one of his, like...
I don't really have a problem with the fact that she's aggressive towards other people, because I think, you know, she's basically been tortured as a child.
It makes sense in the plot. You know, she is basically a test. Yeah. She's a guinea pig test subject her entire life. It makes 100% sense. I was saying, at first I didn't really like her because she was just really sort of abrasive and just wouldn't really communicate.
Well, yeah. I didn't really have that sense.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it makes sense, and I did like her towards the end. That's all I'm saying. I think she had a nice arc.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You know, all that stuff works for me. It makes sense. I think the only thing I would maybe put into question with her character is when she decides to actually talk.
Yeah, it does take a while. Yeah, you are well into the film before she utters a word.
Well, start of the third act, really, isn't it?
And I thought it was kind of funny, because when she starts talking, Logan just looks at her, it's like, what the fuck? You know, like, you talk? Yeah. We've been traveling for 2,000 fucking miles and you talk? You know, I like that.
Yeah, so I guess you just put into question, why is she deciding to talk now? Maybe she only really talked with Charles off screen, maybe, and she never felt comfortable talking to Logan, I don't know. And after Charles dies, then she decides to talk to him.
Yeah, I think it's probably it.
Maybe, yeah. Did you tear up then at the end? What moment made you tear up?
Well, you know, there's several, you know, I would say Charles's death, burying Charles, Logan's death, burying Logan. I think those 4 points, they're nice beats, and, you know, they're quite sad. Yeah. Because, I mean, you know, not only in the context of the film, but, like, you've got how many films with these characters, do you know what I mean?
I didn't actually tear up much when Charles dies, because it's all so sudden. It happens so quickly, and you're just not prepared for it. With Logan, it's very much drawn out.
Yeah.
And you really feel it.
Yeah. I think what kind of got me with Charles is just basically... as he's dying, and just like Hugh's reaction to it, Wolverine's reaction to it, of just trying to console him and just be like, I'm sorry, you know, and all that. I thought it was also a really cool thing because, you know, the dad that took them in really does like them, and then his entire family gets killed by a clone of the guy he's been, you know, keeping for the night. And I love how Wolverine is going to lose to X-24, and he comes out of fucking nowhere and just, like, rams into him with his car, and then comes out with his shotgun to blow away Logan, and then just kind of collapses dead. Yeah, that was a crazy scene. You're like, even when he's trying to do a good thing, like, his past comes to haunt him and kills a bunch of innocent people.
I think the moment that made me tear up in Logan's death, when Logan says, so this is what it feels like, and then Laura just says, Daddy... You know, her saying that makes me tear up every time.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
When she's reciting the Shane monologue is amazing. You know, when she turns the cross to an X on Logan's grave is such an amazing touch there, and always makes me quite emotional when she does that. That's a great little bit. So for me, you know, favorite performance is really easy. Hugh Jackman, definitely. Probably his best performance in an X-Men film by far.
Yeah.
By far. Same?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I think Hugh Jackman is my top.
So, score for me, you know what, like, the acting in this is pretty exceptional. Even from Daphne Keane, I think she does an incredible job as well. Certainly with her emotional scenes at the end. I think for such a young actress, she matches Hugh Jackman, definitely. I would say Hugh Jackman, tour de force. Patrick Stewart goes through so much emotion as well, anger, immense sadness, you know, lunacy as well. As you said, Boyd Hilbrook is fucking brilliant as Pierce, this like great like fanboy villain.
I know. You don't get too many fanboy villains, and I just love his giddiness. I think, to me, that's what sells him as a good villain, is his giddiness at just seeing Wolverine, like acting in such a way like, oh my god, I know you. You know, I just like that. It's just a great characterization for a villain.
He's like, I'm such a huge fan, but I got to do my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to go like 9.6, I think, for acting.
Yeah. No, that's pretty damn good score. Yeah, I think the acting is. I mean, the film is great, and the acting I think is it makes it just that much better. Yeah, maybe I'll go like 9.3.
Cool. Right, let's add up the scores then for Logan. It's a high one. Logan gets 54.9. That could scrape into the top 10. Find out on Tuesday. Logan wins this one fairly comfortably, I would say, with 54.9 to V for Vendetta, which got a score of 50.9. So no shame with a score like that for V for Vendetta. Still really good film. Right, next week, as Don't Breathe 2 is coming out in cinemas. Excited for that one. First one was a really good horror film, blind guy, serial killers kind of thing. Really cool. So the sequel is coming out. So we'll be doing horror sequels for next week. So it'll be interesting to see what we pick. As always, Boaz, you were pretty remarkable today.
That's amazing. I was extraordinary. X-Men. X-Force.
Yes.
Activate.
Extraordinary.
Yes.
All right. See ya. Bye.
See ya.
That's it for this week's pod. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to find out more about the podcast or suggest future topics for us to discuss related to upcoming releases, let us know on Instagram at Film vs. Film Podcast and on Twitter at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off. Thank you.